Begin. The heavy bass thumped through the nightclub floor, a constant, dull heartbeat against Ryan Hale's ribs. He stood a little behind El Diablo, the cartel leader, a silent shadow in a tailored suit. Ryan wasn't just a bodyguard. He was Agent Hale, late 30s and deep undercover. For 6 months, he'd been living a lie, a dangerous dance with men who killed without a second thought. His eyes, though seemingly focused on a shifting crowd, absorbed every detail. The nervous twitch of a new recruit, the subtle hand signals exchanged between El Diablo's lieutenants, the location of every exit. He'd gotten good at blending in, at moving with a quiet confidence that spoke of competence without drawing too much attention. His role was simple: protect El Diablo, anticipate threats, and report everything back to his handlers. But the reporting part was getting harder. Trust was a fickle thing in this world, and every whispered conversation, every suspicious glance, chipped away at the fragile cover he'd built. Ryan's heart hammered a steady rhythm against the club's beat, a constant reminder of the thin line he walked between life and death. He had to be careful. One wrong move, one misplaced word, and his mission and his life would be over. And begin. The club lights flickered, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance with Ryan's growing unease. He felt eyes on him, not the usual casual glances, but something sharper, more probing. It was Marco, El Diablo's right-hand man, a cruel smile usually plastered across his face. Tonight, that smile was gone, replaced by a narrow-eyed stare that followed Ryan like a predator. Marco had always been wary, but lately, his suspicion had turned into an almost obsessive scrutiny. Just last week, Marco had cornered him, asking pointed questions about his past, details Ryan had carefully crafted, but which Marco seemed intent on unraveling. "You're a little too clean for this life, aren't you, bodyguard?" Marco had sneered, his breath hot with stale liquor. Ryan had brushed it off with a practiced shrug, a cold smile, and a vague answer about preferring to keep his hands dirty in private. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Marco was watering it with every suspicious look. Ryan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Marco was dangerous, smarter than he looked, and his growing distrust was a ticking time bomb. Ryan knew he had to be extra careful, every movement, every word, now under intense critical review. The air around him felt thinner, charged with unspoken threats. And begin. The club's thumping bass faded as El Diablo's private elevator ascended, carrying Ryan and his boss to a quiet penthouse office. Marco was already there, leaning against a dark wood desk, his eyes still fixed on Ryan. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that made the hairs on Ryan's neck stand up. El Diablo, usually jovial, looked grim. He poured 3 glasses of expensive amber liquid, handing one to Ryan, another to Marco, and keeping the third. "There are whispers, Ryan," El Diablo said, his voice low, almost a purr. "Whispers that you are not one of us. Marco here, he has a strong nose for these things." Ryan's grip tightened on the glass, his mind racing. This was it, the moment he dreaded. He met El Diablo's gaze, trying to project calm confidence. "My loyalty is to you, El Diablo," Ryan replied, his voice steady. El Diablo smiled, a thin, humorless line. "Words are cheap, bodyguard. Actions, they tell the truth." He took a slow sip of his drink. "There is a man. He has betrayed us. You will deal with him. Prove your loyalty. Make an example." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Ryan's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the dawning horror of what El Diablo was asking him to do. He had to kill someone to keep his cover. And begin. The name El Diablo gave him echoed in Ryan's head. Mateo Vargas. A quick search on his hidden burner phone later that night confirmed Ryan's worst fears. Mateo Vargas wasn't a rival gang member or a hardened criminal. He was a low-level accountant, a family man with 2 young children and no known ties to any criminal organization. He had likely skimmed a few dollars from the cartel's books, a foolish mistake, but not one that deserved a death sentence. A wave of nausea washed over Ryan. His mission was to stop these people, to dismantle their operations, not to become one of them. He was a DEA agent, sworn to protect, not to execute innocent people. The thought of raising a hand against Mateo Vargas, a man whose only crime was a desperate act of petty theft, made Ryan's stomach churn. This wasn't just a test of loyalty, it was a test of his soul. He stared at the grainy picture of Mateo and his smiling family on the phone screen, a cold dread settling deep within him. He couldn't do it. He absolutely could not. But if he refused, his cover would be blown, his life would be forfeit, and all his efforts to bring down El Diablo would be for nothing. The weight of the impossible choice pressed down on him, a crushing burden. End. Begin. The next morning, Ryan met El Diablo with a hardened expression, feigning a chilling resolve he didn't feel. "Consider done, boss," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Inside, his stomach twisted, but on the surface, he was the picture of a loyal enforcer ready to carry out a brutal order. El Diablo nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes, and even Marco's suspicious gaze seemed to soften just a fraction. Ryan knew he had to buy time. He needed a plan, a way to save Mateo Vargas without blowing his cover. "To make an example, boss," Ryan continued, leaning forward slightly, "we need to make sure his disappearance sends a clear message. A quick, quiet job won't do that. We need to make it look like a rival gang. It will show our strength and warn others." El Diablo stroked his chin, considering. "A good point, bodyguard," he mused. "It will take time to set up, to make it convincing." Ryan seized the opening. "Exactly. We need to gather intel on rival movements, plant false clues, maybe even stage a minor skirmish. It will be more effective, more memorable." He watched El Diablo's face carefully, trying to gauge if his ploy was working. The cartel leader nodded slowly. "Very well. Take the time you need. But remember, the outcome must be the same." Ryan forced a grim smile. Time. That's all he needed. End. Begin. With the clock ticking, Ryan plunged deeper into the cartel's inner workings. He used the time needed for setup as an excuse to gain access to more information, hoping to find something, anything, that could be a lifeline. He volunteered for errands, listened in on hushed conversations, and subtly steered discussions toward the cartel's upcoming operations. He needed a big enough score, a major drug shipment, a planned hit on a rival, something that would justify a full-scale police raid and get him and Mateo Vargas out of this nightmare. He spent hours in El Diablo's office, supposedly planning the staged attack, but really, he was scanning documents, memorizing faces, and noting down codes. He learned about a massive cocaine shipment coming in from Colombia next month, a shipment so large it could cripple the cartel if seized. He also discovered a network of dirty cops on the cartel's payroll, a fact that made his blood run cold. This information was golden, but getting it out was another challenge. His secure line was compromised, and even sending a coded message felt like walking through a minefield. The pressure mounted with each passing day. He was uncovering more than he ever had, but the more he knew, the more dangerous his position became. He was closer to saving Mateo, but also closer to his own demise. End. Begin. The luxury of borrowed time began to run out. El Diablo grew impatient. "Where's the intel, bodyguard?" he barked, his voice sharp with annoyance. "Where's this elaborate plan you promised?" Marco's gaze, which had briefly softened, was now colder, more intense than ever. He hovered like a vulture, whispering in El Diablo's ear, feeding the leader's growing frustration. The staged skirmish Ryan had proposed hadn't materialized, and the rival gang intel was thin. Every meeting became a test, every question a veiled threat. Ryan found himself constantly inventing excuses, fabricating small details about ongoing surveillance and slow-moving rival operations. The stress was immense. He slept little, his mind racing, trying to outwit two dangerous men who held his life in their hands. The weight of Mateo Vargas's fate, coupled with the constant pressure to maintain his facade, was crushing him. He could feel his carefully constructed calm starting to crack at the edges. He was running out of plausible delays, and the atmosphere in the cartel compound was turning from tense to outright hostile. He knew a breaking point was near. The bad guys were closing in, and his window of opportunity was shrinking to a sliver. And begin. Desperate, Ryan seized a fleeting opportunity. While El Diablo was distracted by a sudden argument between two of his men, Ryan slipped away to a seldom-used utility closet. His hands trembled as he pulled out his hidden burner phone, the one he used for encrypted messages to his handler. He typed furiously a quick, coded plea for immediate extraction, mentioning the cocaine shipment and Mateo Vargas's life. Just as he hit send, a shadow fell across the doorway. "Marco, what are you doing in here, bodyguard?" Marco's voice was low, laced with suspicion. Ryan's heart leaped into his throat. He stuffed the phone back into its hidden pocket with a practiced flick of his wrist. "Just checking the wiring, boss." El Diablo complained about a flicker in his office lights. "Thought I'd see if it was a loose connection down here." He forced a casual shrug, trying to appear annoyed rather than terrified. Marco's eyes narrowed, scanning the small space. He sniffed the air, then glanced at Ryan's slightly sweaty forehead. "Seems fine to me," he grunted, but he didn't leave. Ryan knew he had to divert him fast. He grabbed a loose wire, jiggled it theatrically, and gave a frustrated sigh. "Must be upstairs then. I'll check the main panel." Marco finally grunted and walked away, but Ryan knew he hadn't truly fooled him. He'd narrowly avoided disaster, but the close call sent a chill down his spine. And begin. The morning arrived, cold and gray, mirroring the dread in Ryan's stomach. El Diablo had summoned him to a remote warehouse, a place where business was conducted away from prying eyes. Mateo Vargas was there, bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror, pleading silently. Marco stood nearby, a smug, expectant look on his face. The air was heavy with unspoken violence. El Diablo gestured to Mateo, then to Ryan. "The time has come, bodyguard. Show us your loyalty." A cold sweat broke out on Ryan's forehead. His mind raced, desperate for an escape route, a last-minute miracle. But there was none. No sudden police raid, no handler bursting through the doors. He was alone, completely trapped. He looked at Mateo, then at El Diablo's unyielding face, then at Marco's sneering challenge. The gun felt heavy in his hand. He could refuse, die, and take Mateo with him. Or he could play the part, commit an act he would forever regret, but perhaps save Mateo and, ultimately, bring down this entire evil empire. It was an impossible choice, a moral precipice. His training screamed at him to uphold the law. His conscience screamed louder to protect the innocent. He felt a tremor run through him, a battle between duty and humanity raging in his mind. And begin. A plan, desperate and daring, flashed through Ryan's mind. He stepped forward, gun raised, his face a mask of cold resolve. Mateo flinched, his eyes squeezing shut. Ryan aimed, not at Mateo, but slightly to the side, at a flimsy stack of crates behind him. Bang! The gunshot cracked through the warehouse, shockingly loud. Mateo convulsed, a scream tearing from his throat. A sound Ryan prayed sounded convincing enough. Simultaneously, Ryan dropped the gun, spun, and landed a hard, practiced punch on Mateo's jaw, knocking him out cold. He struggled, Ryan growled, his voice rough with feigned effort, tried to run, had to silence him quick before he made a scene. He quickly pulled a small, hidden pouch of stage blood from his sleeve, tearing it open and smearing a liberal amount onto Mateo's shirt and the nearby wall, making it look gruesome. El Diablo stepped closer, his eyes narrowed, studying the scene. Marco peered at Mateo, then at the blood. Ryan held his breath, forcing himself to breathe evenly, even as his heart hammered. He glanced at the unconscious Mateo, praying he would be okay. This was the riskiest gamble of his life. El Diablo finally nodded slowly. "Good, bodyguard. Very good. Clean it up." Marco still looked unconvinced, but the immediate crisis was averted. Ryan had done it. He had made it look like he committed a murder without actually hurting anyone beyond a temporarily stunned accountant. And begin. Later that night, back in his sparse apartment, the adrenaline wore off, leaving Ryan feeling hollow and sick. He'd saved Mateo, for now, by orchestrating a brutal illusion. But the memory of Mateo's terror-stricken face, the sound of his fake scream, and the feel of the stage blood on his hands clung to him like a shroud. He hadn't actually hurt anyone, yet the psychological toll was immense. He felt dirty, tainted by the act he had pretended to commit. He slumped onto his bed, the darkness offering no comfort. His mind replayed the scene in the warehouse, every detail, every chilling moment. He saw El Diablo's cold satisfaction, Marco's lingering doubt. He had crossed a line, even if it was a line of deception. He had become, in the eyes of the cartel, a killer. And in a way, in the darkest corners of his own mind, he felt like one. The weight of the lie was heavier than any physical burden. This was not the kind of work he had signed up for, not the kind of man he wanted to be. He was a good man, a cop, but this assignment was twisting him into something ugly. The hard day had ended, but the shadows it cast would linger for a long, long time. And begin. The immediate aftermath of the warehouse incident brought a strange, unsettling calm. El Diablo's trust, once fractured, seemed to mend, albeit with the chilling understanding that Ryan was capable of extreme violence. The pressure for Marco eased considerably. The cold, suspicious glares were replaced by grudging nods of approval, even a rare, unsettling smile. Ryan was no longer just a bodyguard. He was now truly one of them, having passed the ultimate test. He was given more responsibilities, privy to higher-level discussions. The heavy weight of constant suspicion lifted, replaced by the lighter, but equally dangerous, burden of acceptance. He ate meals with El Diablo, sat in on planning sessions for new drug routes, and was even entrusted with sensitive communications. He saw the inner workings of the cartel with an alarming clarity he hadn't experienced before. This new level of access was exactly what he'd been fighting for, a golden opportunity to gather the intel needed to finally bring them down. Yet, the price of this access, the memory of Mateo's terrified eyes and the lie he'd performed, gnawed at him. He was safer now, less likely to be exposed by internal suspicion, but the peace was fragile, built on a horrifying deception. The quiet was only temporary. He knew it. And begin. The fragile calm didn't fool Ryan for a second. He was playing a deeper game now, a more dangerous one, with higher stakes. El Diablo's trust might have been earned, but it was conditional, always dependent on Ryan maintaining the facade of a ruthless enforcer. And Marco, despite his apparent acceptance, still harbored a flicker of suspicion in his eyes, a tiny, almost imperceptible doubt that could ignite at any moment. Ryan moved through the cartel's world with heightened senses, every conversation a potential trap, every new face a possible threat. He knew he was deep behind enemy lines, isolated from his true allies, relying solely on his wits and the precarious illusion he had built. His mission to gather intelligence on the major cocaine shipment and the corrupt officials was more critical than ever, the key to dismantling this organization. He had to find a way to get that information out, to trigger the raid that would finally bring an end to El Diablo's reign of terror. He was living on borrowed time, a silent clock ticking towards either a successful mission or a brutal exposure. The next move had to be precise, definitive, and above all, undetectable. He was a phantom among wolves, and the hunt was far from over. And begin. Alone in his apartment, the memory of Mateo's terrified eyes and the chilling sound of the fake gunshot echoed in Ryan's mind. He had done what he had to do, made the impossible choice, but the cost was heavy. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the exhaustion deep in his bones. This life, this constant deception, was wearing him down, blurring the lines between Ryan Hale, the DEA agent, and the ruthless bodyguard he pretended to be. He thought of the innocent people caught in the cartel's web, like Mateo. He thought of the families destroyed by the drugs and the violence. The ugly truth of what he had witnessed, the darkness he had been forced to embrace, fueled a quiet rage within him. He was tired, yes, but he wasn't broken. Not yet. He looked at the hidden compartment where his burner phone lay, the device that held the key to bringing down this empire. He had to push through, had to endure the psychological torment, had to make every difficult choice worth it. This wasn't just about his survival anymore. It was about stopping El Diablo, about justice for all the Mateos of the world. He knew he had to keep going, no matter the personal cost, to finally stop the bad guys for good. End.